And action. Randy had a question on high value foods. And what do I mean by high value foods? Well, the reason I wanted to bring up his idea or the question was because it was good. Randy's doing well. He's cut back his portion down to sustainable levels. But when somebody cuts back portion, it gives them very little leeway to fit in those foods that cause high satiety. If you check out my video, DrRic's question from Natalie on protein intake, it's also on YouTube, you'll see what I'm talking about as far as protein intake. Now, the idea is always foods that give satiety are the ones that when they get into the belly, they quickly tell the brain, I am full. And they keep on giving the message to the brain, I'm full for at least 4 to 6 hours. That's a pretty good span of time to make it so you don't have to snack. The problem is when we get into a weak spot, when we get into tired times of the day, when we have to take a nap or when we're dozing off, that's the time when we make the poor decisions. When you have satiety, even if the tiredness comes, if you're satiated, you'll have proper decisions. You won't go for the food. You'll go for a walk, perhaps. So that's when it's important. That's why satiety is very important. And protein does it. The other macronutrient that does it, fat, healthy fat. And it just so happens I have my usual go-to fish. I'm a pesco oval vegetarian. So I like fish, eggs, poultry. The idea with fish is not only does it have protein, it also has fat. And healthy fat, sardines, herring, mackerel, salmon. So it does stink. And in my office about 2 hours ago, I had herring, and unfortunately, I can still smell it. So that is a downside. But the good side is that there's 1,000 milligrams of total omega-3 in this. So not to go on to my next video on DrRic tutorial omega-3 oil, but it's important for lowering cholesterol, taking care of mood, and helping with arthritis. But it works as a protein source. So if you take this in as part of your meal, high value, then it will give you satiety for a couple hours. Not everybody likes that. Sometimes you'll have to go to other forms of meat. Protein is found in meat. Protein is also found in plant, beans, legumes, nuts. So the way to get that in, if you don't tolerate vegetables, you can do the protein powder. If you don't like milk, you can do the whey powder. So all of those are equal. Whey has got the highest amount of concentrated grams of protein versus pea, soy, hemp, and brown rice. So those are your options. You might have to use more of this guy to get the equivalent 30 grams, but it's important to know how to get that high value food in. And why do we need a high value food? Because if your portions are, say, 2, maybe 3 times a day of eating, and that's it, and you don't want to snack in between or have any pop in between, and you're already decreasing the portions like Randy's doing, you can't really fit in that much protein, can't fit in that much fat, and you definitely can't fit in that much fiber to an already decreased portion. So high value, that's the name. So we try to get in at least following some great cues from Louis Arona's book. Great book. It has recipes, it has procedures. If you go to surgery, it's got some nice data, or at least references, some studies. If you are going to divide your little portion up, it's always important to have fiber. And listen, when we have fiber, it's important because it pulls some of the cholesterol out in your poop. It helps nourish those probiotics that you're taking. It helps with regularity. It helps keep the digestive system moving versus constipated. And it also helps to equilibrate the gut. So this has got high fiber. This is probably one of the lowest glycemic indexes, if you know what a glycemic index is. But it's also a piece of wood. And I wouldn't eat a piece of wood, although this is holy wood. You don't just eat a piece of wood and say that you have a low glycemic index food source. So the objective is we don't just go by numbers, we have to go with satiety, with that how it tastes in your mouth, what it makes you feel like when you eat it. So those are the values of satiety, which are very, very important. It's not just science. Like Lou says in his book, you have to have some form of happiness when you eat. So the idea is that if you can take those 3 basic building blocks. 2 of them are macronutrients, proteins and fats. Those are high value foods that give satiety. And then maybe a little bit of fiber. If you don't like eating fiber, then you can always take psyllium. Psyllium, I've talked about this before, for lowering cholesterol and keeping your sugars low. Psyllium is a powder. If you put it in your water and you drink it quickly, you might be able to get 6 grams of fiber in without a big carbohydrate load. If you don't like that, you can do Acacia. Check out my video, DrRic tutorial fiber number 3 and number 4. Acacia doesn't gel up as fast, but it tastes like you're eating wood. Anyway, those are ways to get fiber in if you don't like to do the grain way, or if you don't like too many vegetables, although you really got to get vegetables in. But of those 3 high value foods, you usually would try to get all this stuff in first. So here's the spoiler, is that with regards to small portion meals, if you're going to have a small portion, cool, but make it high value and try to get your protein, your vegetables, and maybe your fat in first before you eat the carbohydrate load. And hopefully your carbohydrates are low glycemic index. I'm not going to talk about that now, it'll take too much time, but look up glycemic index and look up glycemic load. Those are both ways to measure which carbohydrates you should be picking and what kind of portions you should be eating. But everybody's got to have a little bit of something. And again, if you are already limiting your portions, try to make it so you have high value or high satiating food groups first. And that's what's so great about his writing, is that he actually said to do the proteins, the vegetables, and he didn't say fats, but I'm saying fats first, and then it'll give you satiety to the brain, so that by the time you're taking your carbohydrates, you're already satiated. You might not even eat the carbohydrate part, but it'll still give you fullness in the stomach, which counts a lot. Other things for satiety, not that it's high value, but herbs. Garcinia cambogia, really nice. It showed a better response than dieting alone as far as the net loss of weight. This is from, you can check out the studies on Consumer Labs. And then also, the timing is very important. If you go back to back with the breakfast and lunch, with the protein supplement if you can, and then go a long stretch until dinner, you might want to eat a little bit at dinner before you take that long 1-hour drive home. So it is important. As far as fluids, probably outside the scope of just talking about portion control and high value food items. And plus, water is not a high value. I don't think it changes around the pH that much in your stomach like some people think, but we'll save that one for later. I think we'll just make it easy to say, if we're cutting back on portions and total calories per day, try to make it very, as best as you can, proteins, fats, fibers first, and then the carbohydrates later. Time your meals properly, and hopefully this works to give you satiety. If you can't grab it from that, then you can do satiety as far as making sure that your brain is satiated. Calming practice is also very important, so check out my video, DrRic tutorial of mindful eating, in addition to getting a really good night rest. If you don't have a good night's sleep and you're trying to wake up in the morning and be very strict with your diet, it's not going to work. You'll be tired, and that's, again, a weak part. If you're tired, you can expect that's when you'll be the most susceptible to making the wrong decisions. So you see, the things that we did the night before will affect the day of. So it's very important to plan all this stuff out. It doesn't take that much effort, maybe when you first begin, but if you get it into a rhythm and a ritual, it'll be a piece of cake, and then we can lose the weight like it was studied. There was a very nice idea, or a very nice study that Lou put together, showing the differences in total weight loss between 4 different groups. One was high protein, high glycemic index. The other was high protein, low glycemic index. The third was low protein, high glycemic index. And the last one was low protein, low glycemic index. All of them were given about 800 calories a day for, I believe, 12 weeks or 26 weeks. They all lost 8%. But the guys with the high protein, low glycemic index actually kept it off and went on to continue with dieting after the other groups. So that seems to be the best. High protein and carbohydrates at a low glycemic index or low glycemic load. So